Welcome to the Phi-Lacrosse-ophy podcast, where host and lacrosse expert Jamie Monroe will do what he does best, talk about lacrosse. Each episode will provide listeners with education, insights, stories, and lessons about the lacrosse world. We will discuss current events, coaching, philosophies, and college lacrosse recruiting. Now let's get started with your host, Jamie Monroe.
I'm really excited to welcome Seth Tierney to the Phi-Lacrosse-ophy podcast. Seth is the head coach at Hofstra. He's been there for 14 years. His playing days, he played at Hopkins, coached at Hofstra as an assistant from 95 to 2000, coached at Hopkins again from 2000 through 2005, was a part of a championship run in 05, was the offensive coordinator and associate head coach there, and then moved on in 06 to be the head lacrosse coach at Hofstra. He is currently the chairman of the advisory board for the PLL and an assistant coach on the USA team. Seth, really fired up to have you on the Phi-Lacrosse-ophy podcast.
Jamie, thanks for having me. Looking forward to this podcast here.
Awesome, man.
The Phi-Lacrosse-ophy podcast is made possible in part by the JM3 video assessment tool. There's no question that video is critical to player development. One way or another, your son or daughter must utilize video to learn their game and the game. To learn more, see video testimonials, or register, go to www.jm3sports.com/video right now.
Okay, well, I would really love to hear about your experiences with the USA team, from the perspective of what was it like, what did you learn, and, the pressure of that championship game. I mean, I know it was over a year ago, but it was such an incredible game. But I would love to hear, and I think people would love to hear what it's like to get that level of talent and what it's like to coach them, and also to be able to coach with such great coaches.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I couldn't be more humbled and honored to have been selected to be one of the USA assistants, to work alongside Coach Danowski again, who's one of my mentors, to work alongside a lot of guys that I knew or had coached, and like you said, that talent, and then to be in a game of USA Canada with that type of feel to it is pretty special. Not many people get a chance to do that, and then obviously the way it turned out was a little bit storybook ending for us. And then, again, then the next part of being asked to do it again was pretty wild, but a great story. Just heard Coach Danowski was going to be named the head coach of the USA team, very well deserved, and all of his accolades and success. Reached out to him and basically said, should I apply? Should I not apply? I don't want to mess anything up. Maybe you have a staff already. We worked together before. We had a lot of heartfelt conversations going into it. And then it was up to a committee, with U.S. Lacrosse. And I think there was 30-something applicants. And, for them to pick three, and Joe Amplo and Tony Resch and myself really rounded out a great staff. And Coach Danowski is, he is the type of coach and the type of person where he just wants really good people around him. And again, I guess I'm not creating anything wild like that. Everybody would like that, but it's really, really important to him that he works with people that he will get along with, that understand him, that he understand us. And part of that chemistry, I think, dripped down to the players. And that's where hopefully that last goal came from, or at least played a little bit of a role in.
Yeah, it seems like Coach Danowski, that sort of way he built a culture drips down in all the programs. It seems like people are happy and they're pretty good about playing well when they need to.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, he wants players to play. He wants them to be themselves. He wants to play good fundamental lacrosse. He'll certainly let you know if you shoot a ball sidearm and that you could have shot it overhand and have a little bit more accuracy. He'll let you know. But he wants guys to have fun playing this game that's been so good to him and to all of us. So he wants guys to just get everybody back into their comfort zone. And as you can imagine, when you have these USA weekends that maybe aren't tryouts, but they're events, he does spend a lot of time trying to think of what the guys are thinking, and let's get them back into their comfort zone so we can really get to know them. And one of his statements at the end was, win, lose, or draw, let's make sure that that locker room is made up of guys that we want it to be, and not just pick a guy because we should, or, of a talent or an ego. Let's pick the right team. And he's adamant about those things.
How do you craft, you've got the best players in the United States, which is many of the best players in the world, but we know that we're going up against Canada that has another set of great players and some of the best players in the world. They play very differently. How do you, prepare a group and choose what you're going to do, and then say, well, also we're trying to win a gold medal here, and we know that it's going to be a very different game than we're used to kind of preparing for in college lacrosse?
Yeah, I mean, when we first got together, and the team started to form after we announced the team. Like, we couldn't make that happen any sooner. Everybody was kind of on their toes until we announced the team that would travel to Israel. And then at that point, that's when the text groups started to form, the relationships started to form. And there were a few things that we were concerned about, this guy plays on this pro team, this guy plays on this pro team, do they get along? And so when we got together at training camp, Coach Danowski sprinkled his magic dust on it, and made sure everybody, got to know people as they were, not of what people thought of them, but who it really is, this guy, and going forward. When I looked at the 10 offensive players, listen, we're not playing 6-ball soccer out there, and not everybody's going to have the ball in the stick. But I did spend a lot of time watching these guys play in the pro league. And so with that being said, I just try to put them in spots where they could be successful and not overcoach. At times, I just didn't want them to feel like they were making a mistake. Wearing that jersey is such an honor that nobody wants to make a mistake. It's not like wearing your practice tank for a college practice. You put on those colors and those initials, it could sometimes take you over a little bit. And we just wanted guys to feel their own. And let's put Rob Pinnell in a really good spot to be successful. Jordan Wolf, a really good spot to be successful. We talked about Ryan Brown. What does he bring to the table in regards to this? And then you got, the host of these midfielders, Rabel, Schreiber. We moved Matt Danowski from attack to midfield, basically when we get on the plane to head over to Tel Aviv. And it was it worked out. You've made those coaches' decisions that, you did back in the day, where they just seemed to work out. Like, sometimes you really wish they would work out, and you kind of, urge and push them to work out. Well, this one worked out well. And, and to have guys like Ned Cry, all of them, we called them the 1/10 crew, and everybody just had to bring a 10th. We're not asking anybody to bring any more or any less. You are just a spoke in the wheel here. And if we can rely on everyone equally, then we'll be able to pick the weight up together. And as far as the Canada game, we just really didn't talk about it. We knew Tony Resch was a great resource for us because he's been in those games, and how long and how respected he is in the game. And he just said, listen, there's something about that game. Not the first time you play him, but if you are fortunate enough to play him in the second time, then there's something about the air that's just a little bit different in the USA-Canada gold medal game. And he was right. The first game was, it could have took place in the yard of a prison. I mean, it was guys going after each other, and they knew that, let's just push in the pile and see where we're at, and get a good film, and then study that film later on. And then once the championship came in, it took a little time to settle in because of the enormity of the game.
Yeah, amazing. Would you mind going through guy by guy and just giving us a little bit of a description of either like what's so special in your opinion about the player, or what you learned from them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, certainly, start with Paul Rabel. He is, the ultimate competitor. Obviously, starting this pro league now, there is no site that he doesn't think he can't reach. And unbelievable player. Got a chance to recruit him back when I was at Hopkins. His family has strong ties to the University of North Carolina, so we had to change that up, and he decided to trust us and come to Hopkins. and then to be back on the sidelines after the 05 championship that you mentioned earlier, to be back on the sidelines and win a championship with him. But he just, at the end of every one of these that we'll talk about, he just accepted his role of either he was a one more guy, he took the pole away from two other guys so they could play against short sticks, and literally didn't want to be the show. He just wanted to be a 1/10 of what's going on. And then we certainly wrung him out of all of his experiences in international play, and he played a huge role with that. Tom Schreiber, a guy that some people are calling the best midfielder in the world. And Tommy was a pleasure to coach. All 10 of these offensive guys, they just wanted to be coached. And that doesn't necessarily mean X's and O's all the time. They wanted to be part of something special. And at the end of it, Coach Krzyzewski spoke to our team and he called it the forever game. And this game will last forever with these 10 guys. And I'm just happy and blessed to be part of it. But Tom Schreiber, he brings such a multi-dimensional player, feeder, dodger, scorer, one more guy, ground ball, effort. And he wasn't even close to being 100% healthy. We just couldn't leak that out and go from there. But Tom wasn't missing this. And for him to play to the last 1.4 seconds and have the wherewithal to use this pick that was set by Ned Crotty and Rob Pennell, who had, probably got the biggest assist of his life in that scenario. We couldn't have asked for more out of Tom Schreiber. Matt Danowski, interesting dynamic. Father's the coach. How's he going to feel with all this stuff? The guys on the team voted him captain. What a tremendous honor. And Matt was a coach out on the field. And the best thing about Matt was he knew the line. We played against the pro all-star team, and we came up short by a goal. And that was probably the best thing that's ever happened to us, because we had to go through adversity. These guys had to know how to come back into a huddle, and they accepted all the criticism and all the things we needed to work on wonderfully. And to have a guy like Matt, who's a coach, and understand what we're trying to do offensively, and to be the eyes and the ears out there. He did a wonderful job managing himself and managing the guys out there. And Matt, my relationship with Matt goes back to, when he was a baby, a young guy, and I was working with, Coach Danowski here at Hofstra, and we were playing wiffle ball. And still to this day, Matt can't hit my curve. But with that being said, he's a wonderful guy out there, and it was a pleasure to have him. Rob Pennell, arguably one of the best attackmen, if not the best attackman to play. Can get up to 5-5 on just about anybody. Graham Hossack is obviously, will give him credit because he's a hell of a defenseman for Canada, and he gives Rob, everything that he can handle. But Rob didn't take a shot in the first 60 minutes of the game, and he understood that. And, when have you been to a game where Rob Pennell has played in where he didn't push the envelope in and didn't go to the goal and try to, and try to help his team by getting that? He just knew that the time wasn't right. And then all of a sudden he drove up left-handed. He threw a little backhand pass to Rabel. Rabel threw it across the field to Brown, and Brown threw an underhand low to high shot and to tie the game. And, you got two superstars in Pennell and Rabel just playing lacrosse. And the young guy, the first-time guy, why we brought him was because he could shoot the ball and throw the ball in the goal. So Rob was wonderful to work with. He, every time coming off the field, just tell me what you want me to do. I'll carry the water. I just want to be part of something special. Ned Crotty, I got a phone call from Ned, and, I'm sorry, Jordan Wolf. Let's go with Jordan first. I got a phone call from Jordan, and he just, what an unbelievable person. He just wanted to play off of Rob. And on that phone call, I just said, hey, nobody's playing off of anybody, right? We're the 1/10 crew. Everybody is bringing a dime to the table, and we'll form a dollar together. And, he's going to play off of you just as much as you're going to play off of him. And he had just a wonderful tournament. His speed, his ability to get topside, all of those things, and his ability to be a great teammate was unbelievable. Ryan Brown, is a guy that we just spoke about. you need scorers. As you know, after all of your years in this game, there are players that play offense, there are offensive players, and then there are scorers. And Ryan Brown's a scorer. And when you put together a group of Rob Pennell and Jordan Wolf and Tom Schreiber, Matt Danowski, and Paul Rabel and the others, and you throw Ryan Brown out there, well, the ball is going to find its way into his stick because he knows that he's not going to dodge a whole lot. But if he puts himself in some good spots and we can help him do that, then he's going to get enough shots off. And we're thankful that Ryan Brown did his job and scored a lot of goals throughout the course of those 2 weeks. Ned Crotty, stud of a person, and probably goes unspoken of, where the pick heard round the world. He sends this back pick with 2 seconds to go, 3 seconds to go, and everybody talks about the Rabel, the Pennell feed and the Tom Schreiber finish. And we were fighting Tom Schreiber. Hey, can you please cut with your stick in your outside hand? And he cuts with the stick on his inside hand because it's box and it's more getting more angle on the goal. And he showed us that there's a different way of doing it. But let's not forget about this pick that Ned Crotty played. And Ned, I'm sure people are like, wow, Ned made this team. Ned is an unbelievable ageless player that scores goals, does things that are just right, always makes the right play, and finds himself in the scoring column or the points column or just a good play, what we would call a turnpike play all the time. And, Ned is just a wonderful ambassador of lacrosse, and I'm so thankful to have some time with him. Drew Snyder. Drew was a guy, this midfielder, and he went on one heck of a run, right? He goes to Israel. He wins a gold medal. He comes back. He wins a pro championship. He goes into the following year. He wins another pro championship. I mean, he's got the Midas touch right now. And Drew was very sick for the championship game. Total blood and guts of just putting on a uniform and getting through it. And just all week long, Drew was a guy that we can count on just making the right play and understanding the procedures that we wanted to follow, but also take advantage of the looseness and the freedom that was out there. And if we didn't do that with Drew, then I think he would have felt handcuffed. So, again, he's at his best when he could do Drew things. And we're, obviously thrilled with that. Marcus Holman, I mean, what a competitor. I love what Marcus Holman's about. Says the right things when he's supposed to say them. Plays the right music when he's supposed to play it in the hallways or in the locker room. Just wants to win. Zero to do with Marcus Holman. And, he just did a great job of getting a bunch of time and making use of it. One of our goals was, and it may not have happened at some other USA teams, we tried to get everybody as equal time as we possibly could because everybody deserves. You got 23 studs, everybody's giving out. So, we played that first midfield and second midfield as even as we could. And up until the last run of the gold medal game where we went back with the ones, and that was the only time we didn't go 1-2, 1-2. And we just felt like those guys were hot, and we went to that one double run for the first group. But Drew Snyder, awesome. John Hawes, what a stud. I mean, quiet. He doesn't talk if he doesn't need to say anything. He just sits back. He absorbs everything that he could possibly absorb, and he just rises to the occasion when the time comes. He's never going to hurt you. If he does, he'll get it back for you some other time during that game tenfold. And again, a son of a coach. We had both the boys out there with Will as well, but John Hawes, I mean, again, what a tremendous player. Coach Danowski was dead on with that pick, and so just said, I just love what this guy is about. And who are we missing here? Matt. We talked about Matt. We talked about Tom. We talked about Paul, John Hawes, Ned Crotty, Drew Snyder, Marcus, Rob, Jordan Wolf, and Ryan Brown, all 10 of them there. And we called it we called the 1/10 crew. And just a little snippet at the ring ceremony. We gave out some gifts, and guys probably thought that I'm a different cat to begin with, but I went out and I bought 10 bowling pins, what comes in groups of 10. And I got each guy a bowling pin, and they signed them for each other. And I just wanted them to have 1/10 of something so that they put it on their mantle in their office. Again, bowling, nothing to do with lacrosse, but they know that there are 9 other guys out there that when they're racked together, they were successful.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. Thank you for sharing that. All right, let's beam back into the late 80s, early 90s and talk about your Hopkins days. What it was like playing there, playing for Zim, all the coaches that you played with and then the coaching with. If you don't mind, give us a little flashback.
Yeah, so I got a phone call from a coach named Bill Tierney. He was an assistant coach at Hopkins. At the time, I was at my father's house having dinner, and he I don't want to say he pressured me. There was pressuring back in recruiting back then, but he said, "What are you doing here? Are you going to make a decision?" And I told him, I said, "Listen, my dream was always to come to Hopkins. Thank you for everything that you've done, and I accept the offer to go to Hopkins." And he said, "I'm so proud of you," all that stuff. And he goes, "I'm going to Princeton." And I said, "What?" I mean, after this unbelievable phone call that's supposed to end in a happy moment, now you're saying that you're leaving to go to Princeton? He goes, "Yeah, it's the right move for me." And I said, "Well, should I go to Princeton?" And on the phone, without any hesitation, he goes, "You're not smart enough to get into Princeton." So that was the end of that. That was the end of that conversation. And we kind of passed each other on the Jersey Turnpike as I was heading to my freshman year down in Baltimore. He was heading up to Princeton, where he would ultimately go on and make the legacy of him as a head coach.
Uncle Bill, and
Uncle
he's your
Bill.
mom's or dad's brother?
He is my father's younger brother, and has played a father-like role with me. And, he leads the list of mentors in regards to where I am today. And getting back to Hopkins days, they won it in 87 when I was a senior in high school. And, when you're that, you're thinking, wow, how special is this, walking into it? And these guys are going to have rings on when we get down there. And it was an awesome run. And to play with guys, certainly Coach Pietramala was on that team. He was Dave back then, or Petro back then. Yeah. And, to play against guys like that every day, James D. Tommaso, Quint Kesnick, guys like that defensively, and Brendan Kelly, Matt Panetta, Billy Dwan, Brian Volker. I mean, the list goes on that are still in the game or names of those games, names of lacrosse. One of the best 4 years that I could ever have. I would not change a thing. We unfortunately came up short in 89 against these twins. They're called the Gaits brothers. Was one heck of a game at College Park where it was sold out. It was Leif Elsmo was doing the play-by-play on ESPN, and to be part of that and get in that game was unbelievable. And obviously watching Petro and Gary going at it, and Brian Volker and Paul going at it, and you got the Zalbertis of the world, and Rodney Dumpson and Matt Palum. There was some stars on that field that day, and I was proud to and humbled to just be part of it. But great experience. Coach Zimmerman taught me the game of lacrosse, how to play it. Gave me those opportunities. And then in my senior year, Tony Seaman came in, and again, when you get coached by different coaches, you become a different player, and you become a better player because you understand that there are different ways of looking at things. But 87 and 91, great years of my life.
Tell us about Petro. I mean, people don't, if you didn't grow up in that generation, it's hard to realize just how good he was and how athletic and how fast and how big. You saw him every day. Tell us some stories about what it was like to go up against him and things that kind of like amazed you back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, Dave Pietramala will go down in my eyes as the best defenseman to ever play the game. I know that there's some great ones. I don't want to leave out John D. Tommaso and Pat McCabe and all of these guys, but Dave Pietramala was a game changer from the defensive position. And not only would he neutralize the other team's best player, but he would push the ball. He'd get the ball back for you. I mean, it was just unbelievable, the impact that he had on a game. And, he was great to go against him every day. And I mostly played midfield in college, so I wouldn't necessarily match up against him from time to time. But there's obviously a couple of stories before practice would start. We would switch sticks and we would get after each other. And he was a guy that looked after me. He respected my uncle very much so. And when I got to campus, he took me under his wing, and Petro was, people, whatever would be said back in the day of the late 80s, Dave Pietramala would be when we were competing in practice, there was no better competitor. And on game day, you wouldn't even question yourself is Petro going to show up? He was already there. And that's what he lived for. And he was just an unbelievable teammate to watch, to go against. And then, ultimately we didn't know back in 87 to 91, but he would end up giving me, a shot at coaching with him. Right. And ultimately, winning a championship after a pretty long drought at Hopkins in 05, which is a pretty special year.
Totally special. Before we move on to your next stops, I have a theory that the players in that late 80s, early 90s, like you'd mentioned, all those names, the Syracuse guys, the Gaits, Marichek, and Z, and McCabe, and then all the Hopkins guys you mentioned.
Yep.
Wouldn't these players be the best players now too? I mean, I don't think there's any question. Who's more skilled than John Zilberti? Who's better than the Gaits? I mean, the Gaits kept doing it until, 2008 or something. I mean, like I know the game has grown. There's so many more good players than there ever has been. There's more good coaching. There's more good athletes. Everything about the game is better. But I look back at those days and I'm saying those are as good and as skilled of players and good athletically as we've ever seen. Am I in a dream world?
No, not at all. I think if you took out that Jamie Monroe time machine and you put all those guys in it and you transformed them back to today's game, and they had all the resources and the equipment and technology, your statement would be dead on. Those guys were just unbelievable to play with and play for. I'm nowhere near that level of player. I reap the benefits of being a third guy on a first midfield so I can get the ball to certain guys and do those things. I was well grounded on who I was as a player. But, Gary Gait, Paul Gait, sometimes it took 5 to 10 minutes to stop being in awe about them and knowing that you're playing against them. And then, I certainly had a chance to play them when I played again in the New York Saints and they were playing for the Detroit Turbos. You want to talk about two machines. They were like cyborgs. Yeah, there's no blood. You could beat them up. They would never even say a word. And you play hanging all over them they really changed the lacrosse as well as Petro and a couple other guys. They really changed it.
They did. And as great as they were, Volks and Petro, are the two guys that actually could. And Brian Volko, referring to as the head coach at Drexel, was one of your teammates, and you coach against him once or twice every single year. But, man, I've seen some of the films on that. It's just awesome. And it was like lefties on lefties, too. It was kind of like the kryptonite for the game.
No question. Petro, he knew his move. He would beat you, and then he would rip you over the head. And whether it would be on the goal line or not, and Coach Zim would be pulling his hair out of his head, but he got the ball down to the ground. And Volks was just this vanilla guy. He wasn't going to wow you with some fancy, walking the dog stick skills, but he was going to lay a check across you. He's going to let you know it was going to be a long 60 minutes, and he was just going to play good, solid defense until you broke. And those were some of the best battles that I got great front row seats to watch and be part of.
It's pretty awesome. So through the 90s, you ended up at Hofstra from 95 to 2000. What did you do in the first few years before you got to Hofstra?
Yeah. Got a chance to open up a restaurant called the Crease, a lacrosse-themed bar. When I left Hopkins, I wanted to get into business. That was my goal. And there was a Crease down in Maryland, in Towson. And so we bought a place over in Merrick and opened it up. And the theme was lacrosse, and had a chance to play for the Saints in the indoor league a little bit. Got a chance to meet my wife in the business. She became a partner, and ultimately I ended up starting to work for her. We all know what that's like. And she ran the show. So it was great. And then one day Coach Danowski walked in after a wedding or a rehearsal dinner and he was looking for a volunteer. And I basically jumped in front of him, and he said, I would love to have you. I would close the bar at 4 a.m. and drive over to Hofstra, and practice would be at 5 or 5:30 and in the fall. And then I'd get a chance to sleep for a couple hours before we did it all again, back to the bar, back to Hofstra. And just forever thankful to John Danowski for allowing me to be on the sidelines with him and to introduce me to this world that has really dominated my life and my family's life. So that part of it was great. And so again, worked here had some great years in those late 90s and won some conference championships and went to the NCAA tournaments and met some great people. And
then you got brought on with Petro when he took the job. Was it when he actually took the job at Hopkins? He brought you along when he was building his first staff?
Yeah, I was actually down in Baltimore on vacation with my mom and my wife. My wife was pregnant, but we had Ryan at the time as maybe a 2-year-old, and we were down in the Inner Harbor and got the phone call, and Petro just said, I would love for you to come down and work together and run the offense. And I sat there and I stared at the phone, and we were at this hotel down in the Inner Harbor, and it wasn't an easy decision. It was an easy decision to go ahead and do it, but the ramifications of the decision were not as easy. My mother, I come from a divorced home, and was very close with my mom. She is no longer with us. I'm very close with my dad, and he's no longer with us. But it would be that was going to be a tough move, just because we had such a great relationship going forward. And my wife is from this big Irish family where she's one of 8, and none of the kids had moved off the island. So the support system was there, and we were just going to pick up, and we were going to sell the bar and a few other things that we had, and we were going to go down for back then. I think Petro goes, I really tried, and I got you the best offer, and would you come down for $50,000? Back then it was a lot of money, and it was one of those people would turn their nose up to it now. And we made some extra money with camp, and I couldn't turn him down. I couldn't turn Hopkins down for them giving me an opportunity to go and go to school there and play there. And so I ended up, telling Coach Danowski and calling all the guys. I remember one phone call to a guy by the name of Doug Shanahan, who was the first Tewaaraton winner. He wasn't thrilled with my decision, and it took him a couple of years to get back on the phone with him. But that's the competitor that Doug was, and certainly I've had an opportunity to coach him and him to be that first Tewaaraton. But then the rebuild was going to take place in Baltimore, and it took a few years. We found ourselves, back in the Final Fours. And then after a loss or two in 2003 and 2004, 2005 happened to be a magical year.
Yeah, it was. And you guys played such great lacrosse. I mean, I was the head coach at Denver then. I'm building a program, and, you're always looking to see what the best are doing. And the way that you guys moved the ball and drew slides and were unselfish. And you ran, if I recall, a ton of 1-4 stuff where you had all kinds of pops and different sort of mumbo looks. And it was like, it just kept you honest as a defensive coordinator. But talk about the philosophy and how you came to playing that way. And do you do some of that stuff now?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we came to play that way. I think that probably there's some coaches out there that may make a mistake because they want to coach what they know versus what are their ingredients and how do we get the most out of our ingredients. And when your top ingredient could be a guy by the name of Kyle Harrison, that's pretty good right there, because he was almost untouchable for 2 or 3 years. Even, we'll cancel out his first year because he was just getting his feet wet, but he was almost untouchable versus a pole. His split dodge and his explosiveness were almost, unheard of what's going on. So again, those guys made me a better looking coach. And you've had players where, you can coach everything you got. You coach your butt off, but you are what you are in certain scenarios. But when you have guys like Kyle Harrison that are split dodging and drawing slides, and if they don't come, he's putting the ball in a coffee can somewhere in the goal. And maybe some of your viewers only know what a Keurig is, but a coffee can is pretty small there. And then you got, intelligent guys like Bob Benson and Adam Doniger that really started this off. And then Connor Ford was the Ryan Brown of Team USA, and guys that can stretch you from the outside. And then you enter Paul Rabel, Greg Pizer, Peter Lasore, guys like that, and Kyle Barry. And, we just all had roles, and those roles kind of fit. And they weren't afraid to make mistakes, but they just knew how important spacing was, what was going to take advantage of some of these defensive schemes. And, everybody did it. And, if you wanted to be a finisher, then work on your shooting. You wanted to be an igniter, then work on your dodging, and then you can expand your role. Otherwise, then you needed to do your role. And Bob Benson wasn't going to win the 40-yard dash versus a lot of people. But I tell you what, he was going to find an open gap somewhere inside, and he was going to make you pay.
Yeah. How do you even characterize Kyle Harrison's split dodge? I mean, obviously he's got incredible athleticism, but like, how did he do it that was different than everybody else beyond the fact that he just might be quicker than you?
He was quicker, but his mindset was just there. And we used to go and watch him play basketball for the friend's school. And, again, his first year, he was disappointed in his first year a little bit with us. And then at the end of the year, I just said, listen, I want to know what your summer league schedule is, and I just want you to play left-handed. You may look foolish at times, but can you imagine if you're just as dangerous lefty as you are righty? And he went out in the middle or the heat of the day with his cousins, and they would go and they would, get all the balls for him, and he would just go out and work and work and work. And his drive to be great, I look at him certainly in the Mount Rushmore of Hopkins midfielders and offensive players. He's a guy that, I have an unbelievable relationship with to this day. But he was a guy that he just wanted to win. He wanted to be able to be loose. And we actually started, his basketball was his first love. And we actually started calling plays like N1 and things like that. And just to get his basketball looseness and calmness and focus out on the lacrosse field. And once that happened,
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about, literally we're talking about untouchable, untouchable.
He had some shake. I remember talking to Mark Van Arsdale back in those days, and he was talking about Kyle's jump shot and the fact that like he would elevate so much that he was like shooting down over the top of the goalie as his stick was extended, And I think like in those early 2000s, the jump shot was still like, questioned as to whether it was fundamentally a good thing to do or not a good thing to do. I'm actually curious about your opinion on that. I have my own theories on why I think jump shots can be very effective or not. But did you teach that to him? Did he do it on his own? And what are your thoughts on that?
Would love to take the credit for it. It's all him. And with that being said, he was comfortable. Like, anytime that you coach a goalie, there's something that could be really not fundamentally sound, but if he finds a way, maybe it's fundamentally sound to that particular player. Yep. And he just felt comfortable dodging down the alley and pushing off and getting some snap in the air. And again, maybe the jump shot had to do with basketball in his head as well. I haven't seen many people, imitate that as we went forward, as well as a couple of guys out there. But with that being said, if he felt comfortable doing it, then go ahead and do it. And when a player is going to work on it and make it right, then he was, again, he had carte blanche. He had the keys to the car. And if he wanted to do that, then, he was too good of a person and too great of a player to not allow him to do something that was what would be considered not fundamental.
It was definitely not considered that way. I mean, certainly now it is. Although Ryan Wade was a big jump shooter in the mid-90s, right? And, nobody really paid attention to it. I personally think that the jump shots are interesting because they can really give you a different release, and it changes up the timing of your release. And I think actually a lot of midfielders will shoot jump shots better right-handed, whereas they might shoot just better on the run lefty. And if you look at Paul Rabel, that's usually what he does actually. He shoots more jumpers on the run righty and shoots on the run lefty. But you know how every midi is like, oh, I shoot a little better on the run lefty anyway because they get the push-pull out of their strong hand at the bottom. And sometimes I think that jump shot is a little bit of a solve for that. But
No question. And remember, Paul was a couple of years behind Kyle, and so he got a chance to be doing individual work with him. And like we said, Paul's work ethic is second to none. He sees something, he wants to get there. He wants to be great at it. You're not stopping him. And so he watched Kyle. He studied Kyle throughout high school and while his days at DeMatha. And now, then all of a sudden now they're going to be on the same team. And Paul actually, he didn't play a whole lot in his first couple games, and we go up to Syracuse and we're down by 6 or 7 goals. And, I remember, Coach Petro coming up to me and giving me that look going, what the hell is going on down there? And, we just needed a little bit of a boost, and in came Paul Rabel, and that was his debut into college lacrosse. And he ended up getting, I think, 4 or 5 goals that game, and we come back and win by 1. And, the country got introduced to Paul Rabel at that time.
I remember Paul Rabel playing on the man up down in a low feeding spot when he was a midfielder as like a sophomore, which I was always amazed by, because I was like, well, here's a guy that's kind of a, dodger and shooter, but you had him in one of the most key feeding spots, and he would put it in there all the time. I forget who was on the inside for you, but it seemed like he had a lot of assists in big moments, being able to sort of slide it in there in your little drop down.
Paul's a better feeder than he is a scorer. He is, because he's just that consummate team player. He is. And he's going to bury a shot going down the alley, but his eyes and his ability to read defenses and make plays on basketball court. You're talking about another great basketball player as well, but he would feed the ball behind people's heads. He'd lead you to where you should be and kind of feed you into a pass. And he had a great ability of doing that.
It's awesome. So you guys ended up winning that championship, and then it was after that you took the job at Hofstra?
Yeah, it's one more year after that. And, I did do the 2006 season at Hopkins, and the irony was I was, at Stony Brook. We were going to play Syracuse in the quarterfinals, and Hofstra was going to play UMass. And, I always had that heart for Hofstra, the place that got me started, Coach Danowski, all those guys. And they had this heartbreaking loss versus UMass. And I felt it in the runway as well, as we were about to take the field. And ultimately, Hopkins lost that game to Syracuse and didn't go to the Final Four in 2006. And then, that, to be honest with you, not to bring it up, that Duke incident happened, and it had an impact on my life. There was this party, and this bad scene happened at Duke, and ultimately, that program got to shine, that they were good players, and what they were being accused of was not true. And Coach Danowski got the phone call to go down to Duke. And so with that, it left the head coaching chair at Hofstra open. And so at that point in time, my mom was battling some cancer. Hofstra was a place that I loved, near and dear to my heart. And, as you know, there's not that many head coaching jobs. And for Jack Hayes, who was the AD at the time, and President Rabinowitz, and all the people here at Hofstra, to get that phone call and for them to offer me the job to become a head coach there, it was a weird way. I know that, Hopkins had some great runs leading up to that. So my name was being thrown around, and I was certainly fortunate. And I owe that to the players at Hopkins for getting my name out there and doing those things. And then certainly my time at Hofstra with Coach Danowski, it all kind of fits together on why I'm here today.
The Phi-Lacrosse-ophy podcast is brought to you in part by the JM3 Coaches Training Program. If you are a coach interested in sharpening your saw, like so many of the guests on the show, you are going to love the content in this program. Go to www.jm3coaches.com for more information.
I did a podcast a few weeks ago with Pat Colleluori, from the headstrong brother of Nick, former Hofstra player. You never got a chance to coach Nick, but you've become a big part of their life. Do you mind just chatting a little bit about your thoughts on how Nick and the Colleluori family have influenced and impacted your life?
Sure. So I accept a job at Hofstra. I fly back down to tell my wife, and my son is on the little peewee football field, got football practice, and when he comes off the field, we're gonna need to tell him that we're moving, bud. And he didn't understand that there were going to be 7-year-old boys in Long Island. He just thought they all lived in the Timonium area. And when I got home that night, that's when I really started to get to work. What is this Hofstra team about? And who are the leaders? And what are the stories? And where do we start? You do, when you become a head coach, you do these chair spins where you just spin in a circle and you don't know where to begin. And I was fortunate enough to, obviously Joe Amplo was here, and he got me caught up to speed on what's going on. So my first phone call after hearing about Nick Colleluori was to Nick and the Colleluori family, and drove up from Baltimore, made a little bit of a pit stop in PA, and got a chance to start our relationship off. And Nick was battling non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Got a chance to learn about the whole story and how it happened, and become part of the fabric of the Colleluori family. And like you said, I never got a chance to coach him on the field, but he made it to a couple of events at Hofstra, and we got some time to spend with him before ultimately him, passing away in November. And it was certainly, it was a tough day. Michael Colleluori was a sophomore on the team, and my job was now to look after Michael. And it was probably my first 1.0 scholarship, without even a heartbeat. It was, whatever money Nick is getting, please just transfer it over to Michael. We don't need another player. We need the Colleluori family to know that Hofstra and Hofstra lacrosse is where our hearts are at. And tough road for Michael. Obviously, the memories every day, the locker every day, the number 27 every day. And he just handled it like a superstar. Like he wrote the book on how to act and how to respond when your best friend and your brother passes away. And if there's not a book out there, then Michael should write it, because he was just a stud. Obviously went through the whole funeral, all those things. And still to this day, number 27 stands strong in our locker room.
What the Colleluoris have done to remember Nick and to continue his vision for helping those that are been affected by cancer is absolutely unbelievable for people out there. If you haven't listened, please listen to the Pat Colleluori podcast I did, and you'll be blown away by what they're doing. I mean, these people work so hard, and all they're trying to do is make people's lives better. It's pretty incredible.
I made the mistake of having a conversation with Mrs. Colleluori when we started a golf outing, and we started the fall lacrosse event to raise awareness and raise funds, back when this thing was brand new. And, 4 or 5 years later, I remember literally driving here on Long Island and have her on speakerphone and go, yeah, Mrs. Colleluori, this is really hard for me to say, but there's going to be other tragedies, and people are going to end up giving their time to this other tragedy, or maybe their finances, and people go through this all. And I don't know what the lifespan of Headstrong was. I didn't see her. I didn't see her face, but she was just laughing at me. And that lady is wonderful, and she is the heartbeat of that family, and she is a pit bull. Does not exist in the Colleluori fabric. We're going to get it done. And like you said, what they've done in a world that is constantly pulling people in different directions for support and help, and where they've come, it is incredible. I mean, she is a competitor. She is relentless, which is obviously one of the terms in Headstrong. And she basically had a family meeting around the table and said, I'm the lead blocker, and you're going to follow my lead, and Headstrong will be relevant as long as I am here. And, there's got to be a lot of credit that goes to that family, and certainly Mrs. Colleluori.
Yeah, amazing. So you've been at Hofstra for 14 years. Psyched to talk to you about some philosophies on that. I wanted to, you've been to 4 NCAA tournaments. You won the Colonial in 2008. And by the way, I never thanked you for that. But that pretty much got Denver into the NCAA tournament that year. It was kind of funny. Like, we had a pretty good resume, but we lost in our first round conference tournament. And you're looking at all the things that need to happen, right? Everybody on that weekend's like, okay, I need them to win. And then it's like, oh, and I need Hofstra to lose. And then I was like, then you guys won, and I was like, oh, actually, I needed them to win, and they won. And so,
Yeah.
pretty exciting start. To talk about how you've sort of evolved as a coach, because when you become a first-time head coach, like you said, you're spinning, trying to figure out what to do. It's kind of like having kids. You can prepare for it all you want, but you really have no idea until you're into it. And just talk a little bit about your evolution as a coach during your 14 years at Hofstra.
Yeah, you get here and, where do you start? You want to put your scent all over everything, and you want to do it by like lunchtime on your first day, right?
Yeah.
And everything I need a new stapler. I need a new pen. You want to start from the bottom and you want to change everything. And after a week of that, I kind of just took a deep breath and go, I got to take over and continue what Coach Danowski started here, because he's such a wonderful person, and what he was building here, there was no need to just stop and go, let's change everything. Let's continue with what he was building here. So he obviously gave me a great springboard to start my coaching career here at Hofstra. And again, what I learned with him, what I learned with Coach Petro down at Hopkins, what I've learned from my uncle was all going to just take part in informing me. And again, you're right. 14 years ago in my first season on the sideline as the head coach, I'm yelling, I'm screaming, I'm cheering, I'm high-fiving. And then 14 years later, you look back and you go, wow, that was an awesome time. But you look at the game a little bit differently, and you change as you get a little bit older on maybe what is more important or what's less important. And we go forward there. And I'm incredibly thankful to all the administrators here, all the ADs that I've had, for allowing me to be me. And run this program in a first-class fashion. The alums, I can't even explain to you the support that they've given, and I'm talking about emotional support. Well, we've got a great group of alums that are just blue collar, and they know what it is to just grind out a season and what one goal wins means. All of those things. And we've had a chance to beat Johns Hopkins a couple of times. We've got a chance to beat North Carolina 3 years in a row. The Ohio States, people out there, Princeton's, we've won Notre Dame when they were won. We've had some big wins here at Hofstra, and the conference we're in, it's a tough conference.
It is.
You talk about UMass and Towson and Delaware and Drexel and Fairfield now. It's a battle. It is a battle, and there's one-goal games up and down every year. And for us to get to the NCAA tournament 4 years, I'm awfully proud of that. And our goal is obviously to win the CAA this year and every year, and get back to that NCAA tournament that it's harder and harder to get to with all of these new teams and the new landscape of lacrosse. But it's just a new challenge, and I can't wait to get out there this year with our guys. But, I couldn't do it without some of our alums, and obviously naming Jim Metzger, Tony Perettini, Joe Corello, the list goes on and on, PJ Bajornaby, all these guys that have stepped forward and have given the support here that a young head coach back then and now starting to get gray hair head coach now, their support has never wavered, and they have just been wonderful. And then for the last 13 years, all those guys that have graduated, the way they come back, the way they support the guys on this year's team, it's been awesome.
That is awesome. I have such great memories of Hofstra myself. I drove down to watch Virginia and Brown play at Hofstra in 1985 when I was here in high school, and then my opener was against Virginia at Hofstra in 1986. My first coaching recruiting ever, Coach Waldvogel in 1991. Hey, go down and watch, the county championships at Hofstra. And so I get down there, I see Jeff Goldberg. I'm going to buy a ticket. He's like, no, follow me. We'll hop the fence. And so, got initiated into, hopping the fence. And then all these years of playing, at Yale, we played Delaware at Hofstra every single year. And I recruited, and there's so many NCAA tournament quarterfinals that have been there, and so many incredible games. And I've watched Hofstra win a bunch of big games too. I remember when they beat Hopkins in the 90s. It was just awesome. It's awesome stuff. And the sad news of dropping football some years ago also opened the door to make Hofstra a true lacrosse school, which is pretty awesome. You guys have some of the best facilities in Division I lacrosse, obviously with the opportunities to host all the time. So tell us about your thoughts on this season.
Yeah, this season, real excited. I mean, last season we had some uncanny injuries that, I don't know how to explain. A guy, got a broken jaw. We had a broken back. We had a broken foot. We had, crazy shoulder issues. We had one of our best defensemen did one side lunge right before the opening whistle of a game and tore his hamstring. You get to some of these years where you just can't, figure out why is this cloud following us. And so we had a tough year on the field, a couple, close losses, and the guys are hungry to get back. We've got some good freshmen that have come in this year, a couple guys from Canada that we're looking forward to helping us. And we've got all those guys that were banged up. They're back and they're hungry because they know how precious time is in a game uniform, with only a certain amount of game opportunities, which is probably going to be less than 60 or 70 in their career of putting on a game jersey. You got to cherish every one. And so when a couple guys missed that last year, they're looking to double down on it this year. So we're looking forward to it. We had a good fall. We had, hosted the Colleluori event, and we got a lot of guys some playing time. Guys are working hard in the individual portion right now in the 8-hour period. They're working hard with our strength coach. And then we're looking forward. We're going to head up to Syracuse, in a couple of weeks or 2 months when we first get going, scrimmage them in Vermont, and then come back and we open up against Wagner in our opener. And looking forward to it. Looking forward to, every moment, as as a dad, got my guy here who's a senior. And I remember yesterday when he committed, that's how quick it goes by. I felt like he committed yesterday and he's going to graduate tomorrow. And you almost sandwich this experience into 3 days. Like, yesterday you commit, today I coach you, tomorrow is graduation. And it just goes by fast. So just looking to obviously squeeze out every memory I can with him. My daughter is here and she's a sophomore on the women's team. And it's a joy at times just to look out the window, watch her practice and certainly support her with the women's team.
So special. I got a chance to coach my son in high school, and I didn't get a chance to coach him in college, obviously. But what I'm sure it's so special. There's probably a lot of dad coaches listening here. What are some of the things that you kind of learned, or some of the things that advice you'd give to the dad coach? Because sometimes we're too hard on our own. Sometimes coaches are too easy on their own. How do you find that balance?
Yeah, I would tell all those dads out there that are coaching their sons, you need to go and get two things. You need to go get a mirror, and you need to go get a picture of your son or daughter. And you need to know, you got to have a conversation with yourself on how, if I say this, how are they hearing it? And what's it like for them? Forget about you as the dad. What's it like for them to be coached by their father with all of their peers around them? And maybe that would change your approach, how you say things. Maybe some things need to be said on a phone on the way home instead of everyone else. And it's going to take them a little bit of time to build up some of those social skills that the yelling at your son, you just want the most out of them, but they take it as you're just harder on me because you want to yell at me. And then they're also saying, well, he's just yelling at me because he's my dad. And there's a lot of intertwining and complex communication lines that need to be ironed out. I learned that from Ryan Tierney. There was a time where, I wasn't handling it right, and he taught me a lesson, and he was going to walk away from lacrosse. And the answer was me walking away from his 4th grade lacrosse game because he was not, he was not playing like one of the Hopkins guys, and I was coaching him like a Hopkins guy. And I learned that lesson from a 4th grader. And since then, it's been pretty smooth. There are times that I would like to light him up a little bit and get yelling and screaming, but I know that could be counterproductive, and maybe we just let it go and I speak to him on the side. But the guys on the team, they certainly know that Ryan is not nowhere near any type of pedestal. He's going to get it, and he's going to get it probably for them as well. But I'm just thankful that Ryan understands and handles the situation maturely on what's going on.
Yeah, such a fun player to watch. I love his game. Slick, smart lefty, can kind of do it all. You don't think of him as a dodger, but he can score one-on-one. So That's going to be exciting. And that really is a good segue into my next question for you, which is what is your offensive philosophy? How are you playing now? I'm sure it has something to do with your players, but I'm sure it also has certain to do with principles that you believe in.
Yeah, I mean, we have a new offensive coach this year, and his name is Tim McEntee. And Timmy Mack is going to run the offense this year. And last year, he was a volunteer as he transitioned back from Mount St. Mary's. And Timmy and I were teammates on the New York Saints, and I looked up to him. He was this running back that moved like a cornerback and had the skills of a quarterback. And he was just one of these guys that was just wowing to watch. And I am thrilled that he's running the offense. And together we talk about some offensive things, but just like Coach Pietramala did for me and Coach Danowski did for me, you be you. And because it's going to be really difficult if I ask you to run an offense that I know inside and out and why it would take advantage of a defense. I don't want you to get caught without any answers or maybe not believing in that, because there's just many different ways of looking at things. So I want Timmy Mack to be Timmy Mack, and I want the guys to know and learn from him. We have conversations in the office. He knows, he references some of the things that you referenced, this 14 popping offense and 22 stuff, and the things that I ran about back at Hopkins when I was in charge of the offense. So I'm real excited about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm real excited about it because I just want Timmy to be Timmy. I want John Gorman to be John Gorman. I want Mike Gongas to be Mike Gongas. I want my coaches to be themselves because they're here for a reason. So let's let them coach, and we'll talk about things in the office, but we're on the field. You do you. But we're going to do a lot of team stuff. We're going to have some initiators. We're going to have some guys, some finishers. We're going to have some in-between guys and some brains out there that just understand the flow. But we want these guys to play loose. And I know that's the way Timmy was great. And coaching offense is different than coaching defense. When you coach defense, you have to figure out what they're doing offensively. When you're coaching offense, you got to let the guys figure out what they want to do a little bit and put them in different spots. So I've been thrilled so far this fall with Timmy, coaching the offense, and I'm looking forward to watching it and just being a little bit of a voice behind the scenes and being there to help Timmy on days that, we don't score as many goals as we want and not change everything, and to believe in what you believe in, and it's going to happen, and then certainly congratulate him on days we overscore.
I think Tim McEntee is one of the great coaches that not that many people know. I think you're so lucky to have him. I love that guy. When he was in Manhattan, he did an unbelievable job. And oh my God, the stories of him practicing in some park, and there's like a dude cooking squirrels on the sideline in a little hibachi. I mean, the stories that guy, in fact, I got to do a podcast with him just to get those stories because they are like literally priceless.
Coach Mack is an unbelievable storyteller. And you know what? I couldn't agree with you more. He went to Manhattan on an opportunity, and he went there with a vision to change that program and to go from there, and then went to Dartmouth and then went to Mount St. Mary's. Yep. And he left a positive scent on every program. He's played at the highest level, multi-sport athlete, and again has seen it all, and we're awfully lucky to have him on staff.
Yeah, no doubt. He's awesome. When you think about offense, in 2020, and you sort of look at the trends of what's been going on, how would you characterize the way offense is kind of played and how defenses are making that happen, sort of, when you sort of think about the evolution of the game, say, even in the last, 5-10 years, or even in your times at Hofstra, how have things changed, would you say, sort of just big picture, and what's everyone facing now that's different than maybe years ago?
Yeah, I mean, starting back even at the Hopkins days, it was this Bill Tierney defense, right? This Princeton defense of what's going on and how he was playing and hedging off the crease and doing certain things. And then the popping scenario. Well, if they're doing this, then let's pop the guy whose guy is supposed to slide so that we can lengthen their recovery a little bit. And with certain stick work, maybe we can find someone on the other side of the field or, a rainbow guy at the end to shoot it and go from there. And then then it kind of revolutionized into this high wing offense, right? And everybody's going to be dodging down the wings and see if we can get guys to slide at bad angles and maybe beat them to the other side of the field in their recovery, but certainly taking bad angles. And then you get this two-man game to come in and this infusion of box lacrosse. And can you do it outside and do this hybrid that you basically, invented of keeping that stick on your shoulder and doing these things and having these shallow cuts and putting these defensemen in communicative ways of, do I go, do I not go, when do I go, am I the clear through guy? And then, you were a little bit of the inspiration in regards to that. And then I think, along these rules, now you're talking about a lot of goal line offense, right? Because now how do defensemen play this goal line offense? Is it advantage offense because they have to push or they have to play you and you're going to get pushed into the crease and then the dive and things along those lines. So I do think offense is offense. You gotta, if you don't have these unbelievable few players, right? I mean, who's got an attackman that can just down outright beat guys to the goal and make it happen? The Pat Spencers of the world, the Rob Pennells of the world. Those guys are guys that move the needle, and then, you talk about, some of those middies that would come out there, the Tom Schreibers of the world. If you don't have those guys, because there's so few of them, then you got to figure out what's going to ignite defenses. How are we going to put them in tough spots where they have to communicate, where they're going to have to rotate, where they're going to have to recover, and then how can we lengthen that recovery? So I think a combination of some of that high wing stuff with the two-man stuff. Do you stay and set a hard pick? Do you slip out and then have that carry into a little bit of a goal line scenario? Do you fade the guy at X? Are they shutting the guy at X? And all of these things have now revolutionized into what offense is, and putting these defensemen in some tough spots. And I think that we're starting to get away from just dodging short sticks, because I think once you get close enough to your defenseman, it really is irrelevant on what size of the stick that they have, because the stick is irrelevant. It's now they're playing with hands. You wouldn't know if it was a pole or not. And I think that you gotta go with your igniters. And I think you got to look at your ingredients and what type of groceries you're bringing to the table here on what type of meal you can make. And again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. It goes out to the recruiting. Where does this guy fit in? And, a la putting together this USA team, we don't need another Dodger behind the goal. Rob Pennell and Jordan Wolf, that's plenty. Now we need guys that are going to make those guys look good and make it harder to play.
Yeah. The comment you made about, when you get inside the length of the pole, you might as well just have a shorty, because he's basically playing, with a stick at his hip. And
Yep.
It's really interesting. I feel like Lyle Thompson was one of the guys that kind of taught me that more than anybody. He would get so close to you, but he would just be just outside of your ability. All the box players, actually, they play so close to you, and they kind of when you get that close to your defender, you can really control them.
Yeah, no, there's no question.
Back them off. You can bring them to you. You can make them shade you one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, one of those drills that have taken on. I mean, you used to remember at Denver, or back in those days, where you would do 4-spot one-on-ones, and you would start outside the box in all these areas, and now you do these close-knit one-on-ones where the guy, maybe he has his hands on you already, and that defenseman needs to know how to steer you, and that offensive player needs to feel on where he is on your back or your shoulder, so that you can decide on which direction you're going to go in.
For sure. And, it's funny because you see in the PLL, the most dominant attackmen happen to be the guys that bang you the most, that are physical, that are posting up. It's not to say you wouldn't love to have a Jordan Wolf, right? I mean, that kind of speed. But he's actually pretty darn physical too. I mean, he'll post you up. But you just look at the Matt Rambos, and even Connor Fields, he's not even a big guy. Cuccinello, I mean, you are – on the board of the PLL's advisory committee, you're watching a lot of PLL games, and I'm sure you're kind of looking at the trends. And one for me, is really learning how to have a great post-up game. And I actually think that a big trend is going to be for the midfielders to be able to do the same thing. Because if you get to the high islands,
right,
you got a shorty on you, and you're comfortable there, and you can feed. You can try to double it if you want to, if they turn their back, but if they're kind of sitting there and they're looking at you, it's pretty hard. And all of a sudden you can get some of these little rip moves and pump through the gaps. Jojo Marasco did this year, I mean, that guy can't run anymore, and he gets right to the goal.
No, there's no question. Certainly watching all the PLL games this year, I was astounded by the level of talent. I mean, those games were awesome to watch, and those guys did such a great job in the first year of that league. This is not a advertisement for the PLL. This is just, it is what it is. And that product was impressive. And to get a chance to be part of it with the Rabel brothers, I'm awfully thankful that I would be someone that cleans up the table at the end of meetings just to be part of it. And then they allowed me to be part of it. And it's wonderful and great, more great things to come with the PLL. But the players, and you're right, I think that you and I, as soon as someone would start to slide, move the ball, that may be a thing of the past, because now that guy might be more dangerous with someone on him and learning how to play with someone on you, where moving the ball will allow the defense to get out of a tough situation rather than keep them in a tough situation.
So true. And it's the difference between running by somebody and getting by somebody. And then forever, we're just kind of like, well, he can't run by anybody. Yeah, but he can actually get by people. Yeah. And that's really what it's all about. And I think the Canadians and natives have taught us that.
No question. There's a guy, you could be covering a guy, but you don't have a great angle on him. And we always teach in our offensive guys, don't give it up yet. Yes, he's standing there, but he's not in position to be covering you. And we're letting him out by you moving the ball. Understand what is there and what's not there.
Yeah. All right. So last topic. I love hearing and picking the brains of Division I coaches on recruiting. So starting with character, how do you evaluate that, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, I think in today's day and age, you really got to do some homework, because with the phone, with social media, if you take a chance on a young man or a young woman, and there's some question marks, it's an issue. It's going to be an issue. And I think that I still would rather have grown up when you and I grew up, because it's hard. I don't envy what goes on. I get the technology, and it's very cool, and you can look things up quickly, and you can understand things, and you can get some guy to pick you up in a car in 30 seconds and take you wherever you got. But I think that there's some downside to it. And
there was definitely an upside to the phone rings. I'm not here.
Yeah. Right. You don't have to answer it. Now you're on 24/7, and that makes life a little bit different when, you used to have a quarter on you, and these guys don't even know what a payphone is. But, the recruiting, there's got to be some trust, with these high school coaches, these club coaches, because even with the rules of now just 11th grade, you don't have a whole lot of time to figure out exactly what type of player he totally is, because maybe you see him twice before there might be some commitment talks, and what type of person. And you got to be able to read through some of these club coaches or high school coaches that are just looking to get their guys on Division I rosters at any expense. But you know that there are coaches out there that would give it to you straight. And again, the sport is growing at that youth age and at the high school age, and within the country, and more states picking it up and sanctioning lacrosse. And that's going to be awesome. There's guys out there. We've always been successful here at Hofstra, and I think a lot of coaches would say it, when guys just want to be here and they want to play for you and they want to play together. So we're looking for some of those glue guys. I'm not looking for the best guy in the 2 top club programs in a game like that. Life is totally different than that club game for that T-shirt later on. How is that guy, get back in the car and say, how is that guy going to be as a freshman in our locker room? And is he going to stick it out at the first sign of adversity? Or how many club programs has he played on? Has he transferred a bunch? Does it look like he's not facing adversity? Because as we all know, those early wake-ups in the weight room and the runs in the cold and things like that, the club guys are not putting their guys through any of that. And so it's a little bit of a false read at times. Yes, we fall in love with talented young men and women, and that's going to be the first sign of it. But then it's up to us to do the due diligence of classroom, person, family, experience, and where are we in regards to a relationship with this young man. We'll get more out of someone like that than we will out of the superstar who scored the game-winning goal at the Hershey tournament or whatever it may be.
Obviously, if you're in person with them, there's ways to sort of see what their character's like. You can oftentimes see what their parents are like. how are some of, how do you do that in person? And then how do you do it when you're kind of just watching a game?
Yeah, I mean, listen, now that we're in November, and I'm not sure when this will air, but we're in recruiting time. So, we all come back from a recruiting weekend, and everybody, who's your guy? Who's the one guy that you want to bring to the table right now? And that'll bring 4 guys, one from each of our coaches. And all right, let's start doing some due diligence. Do we want to bring this young man to campus for a visit? And the only reason why we ask that question is time is valuable. I don't want to waste any time if this is not right. I understand that you saw how talented he is, but let's find out what's going on. Is he, what type of student, what type of person, is he coachable? Will he be a turnpike guy here on Hempstead Turnpike? And we got to answer that question, because, there are times you're going to make some mistakes. Well, maybe later on, maybe this weekend coming up, we'll find a better version of those guys. So let's not rush into it as we go forward. A lot of times, you make these mistakes in fall recruiting. The guys just take their sticks out of the closet. They throw it against the wall a couple times. And now we're evaluating them after, a practice or 2 or
right.
Nothing. Don't make those, don't see that fall facade, as you go forward. Let's stay with it. There's going to be plenty of guys out there. So again, we're actually being, with the new recruiting, we're being more careful on what's going on. There's roster caps out there. Yep. This transfer portal has changed the world a little bit. It's very easy to transfer what's going on. And again, I had, as early as last night, I sent out a text to my assistants and said, hey, one of you guys just jump on the portal and see who's out there. Partly I want to make sure that they don't come back and say, hey, Ryan Tierney's on the transfer portal. I got to make sure that doesn't happen as well. But we also got to make sure that, what's going on out there. And it's got to be part of the thought process.
All right. So when you're looking for attackmen, there's kind of positions within positions. What are you kind of looking for there?
I'm looking for a guy that, moves well. We talked about it, how he reacts when he's crowded, a guy on him. Does he still have his head up? Is he less worried about who's covering him and more worried about maybe where the slide is? Does he play other sports? Is he a quarterback? Is he a point guard? Does he have those traits to control things from behind the goal? Even if he's a midi, is that guy, does he fit those traits? And maybe he's an invert midi that could really see some things and understand what's going on. If a guy is a fabulous shooter and he's a finisher and he's a scorer, well, does he fit? Where does he fit? Are we going to have, a peanut butter to his jelly? Are we going to have another guy that's going to be able to do all those things? And again, just a skilled guy, an effort guy, and a hard-nosed guy that's going to be willing to turn the corner, because as you know, in today's day and age, these defensemen, everybody's got personal trainers and everybody's bench pressing a refrigerator now.
Yeah, so true. When it comes to recruiting Canadians, do you see them as offensive players? Are you kind of like a positionless lacrosse oriented mind?
Offense is offense to me, and we'll make it work. Again, we've been very fortunate in the country of Canada. We've had a couple of great ones. Starting, I didn't ever get a chance to coach him, but it was my first film of watching Ethan Iannucci. And some of the things that he could do, certainly in his senior year was magical. I took over the year after. So, I wanted to go back and watch all of those films and what he could do with a lacrosse stick. And then, we had Jay Card, Adrian Sorochetti, Josh Byrne. We had some pretty good guys that played a lot of lacrosse for us and indoor. And those guys could play both attack and midfield, and they were scorers, but they were playmakers. Mm-hmm. And now, we certainly move forward, and we've got a couple of Canadians on our team now, and, Dylan McIntosh and a couple of young guys, and Justin Sykes and Ryan Sheridan. We've got a couple of them out there that we're thrilled to have. And when we go up there, we have to put it through the test as well, because when Canadians are playing against Canadians, it's one look. How are they going to play against an American defenseman that's 6'3", 6'4", with a basketball pole playing defense a little bit? It's a little bit different, but you can certainly pick those guys out.
Sheridan might have had the best goal I've ever seen this summer. Did you see that one hand behind the back goal in the senior game?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, what a stud that kid is. And then Sykes he's a total stud too. Is he Brampton kid, I think?
Yeah, he came from over there, and he was, he's one of those guys, a little bit of Oakville in there as well. And he's one of those guys that, he got injured this fall, but we're certainly, those two guys, the light bulbs are on and their futures are bright.
What do they bring to the table that, generally speaking, Canadians, as it relates to like how it sort of changes the way you view the game and how you coach it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're gonna recruit Canadian players, then you better understand that your offense should have some Canadian flair to it. Let's not bring them down and run an offense that they've never ran before or doesn't have some box lacrosse traits, because now we're taking them. Yeah, it was wonderful when we watched them in the championship, or one of the Minto Cup or whatever it may be. But if we're not gonna do what they're comfortable doing, and we'll meet somewhere in the middle, because now we're playing field lacrosse, but we have to be understanding with that. And guys will blossom in systems like that. And Coach McEntee has been wonderful with that, of running some two-man game stuff with them and some exchange stuff on the backside, and then teaching them certainly how to dodge one-on-one versus a pole, because that's something that's not very, it's a little foreign to them.
You're not going to spend a ton of time with Josh Byrne on righty alley dodges?
No, it's one of those things where these guys teach you that they teach us what you've been teaching. Maybe you want to question yourself a little bit, because there is other ways. And there are, when we say fundamental, there's nothing that says cradling backwards is not fundamental. It is of what's going on. Tom Schreiber taught us, and there's nobody more fundamental than John Danowski. And he's like, Tom, there's little kids watching you play as a USA lacrosse player, and you're cutting to the left pipe with the stick in your right hand. It's not right. And then he goes on and he wins a gold medal by cutting to that side with his stick to the inside. And it makes you go things that make you go, maybe there's a way to teach this differently, but a different type of fundamentals.
The late great Dave Huntley always talked about stick to the middle, and did a lot of studies and stats where he basically studied 15,000 MLL shots and found that in every quadrant, other than dead center, your shooting percentage was higher with your stick to the middle. And Tom Schreiber, reached right around on that catch and finish.
We certainly
missed for the lefty too, but you know what? He had more angle righty.
No question. And you learn how to get to your strength, and it's really hard to cover that both ways. Take away your strength, then they go back to their weakness, and now you got to reapproach, and now getting back to your strength. And you mentioned the guy, Dave Huntley. What a lacrosse mind. What a guy. Lacrosse is. We'll be set back by his loss. There's no question about it.
Yeah. When you're looking at recruiting defensemen, what are you sort of generally looking at, and how do you evaluate? It's easy to evaluate their size and their speed. I mean, that part is generally easy, but how do you figure out? I mean, there's some guys that are sick athletes, but they can't cover anybody. You give them one little head fake and they jump a mile and a half. And then secondly, how do you evaluate their IQ as far as their off ball and their ability to sort of process?
Yeah, I like the stick and hand language, because sometimes you can't hear guys talking, or if they're talking, but you can sometimes see a guy direct someone else, and that means he understands the defense a little bit. So if I can watch a guy talk with his stick in his hands, that's usually a little bit of a sign from me. I agree with you. You don't need to be 6'4", 220 to play defense. Everybody likes the size and the length because of knocking down passes. But if he can't use that to his advantage, like we talked about earlier, of getting close to you, now it's just hand-to-hand combat, and the sticks are not involved, that's part of it. And again, defensively, what's changed recruiting defensively is a little bit of this shot clock, right? How many guys can cover the length of a shot clock, can get the ball off the ground, can clear the ball? Because if you have to redefend, you turn the ball over in the clearing game. If we're going to have to redefend, then everybody's broken down. So not only do you have to be able to have a couple of guys break down and cover the other team's best offensive players, but you got to have a comfort level of getting the ball off the ground and ending the possession and finishing up a shot clock and making sure that you could clear the ball. And then the PLL taught us that once you cross over that midfield line, you better believe you're an offensive player. And who knows, will this college game ever get to a two-pointer and the Jared Newmans of the world enter the college world? And now, people are starting to take that jump shot, which is almost looking like it comes from a pole. Now it's coming from out of a long stick, and more guys might be scoring that way.
Yeah, interesting. So would you say you have more with the shot clock? Do you think there's more value on goalies that can clear it very well and defensemen that can clear it very well than there was before?
I do. I do. I think that, now when you look at, as you look at the game, as Dave Huntley looks at the game, as some of these other guys look at the game, we've entered time zones now. And now it's, can we buckle down for this amount of time? Can we ride as much of the 20 seconds as we can so they'll have less time to play offense? Then if we can hold off their secondary break and they get into their subbing, can we defend for 40, 45 seconds? Can we dig in and do that? And if they make a mistake, can we take away and steal that time and get the ball over the midfield line with us playing more offense than them playing offense? And looking at it a little bit like Moneyball and understanding where the time of possession, where we can steal some seconds and that may turn into minutes.
Speaking of Moneyball, so many people, it seems like every year, whether the new shot clock rules or it seems like every year before that, everyone's like, we're going to be a two-way team. We're going to run two-way middies. We're going two-way. We're going full field. We're looking for two-way middies. And I think that's what everybody wants. But at the end of the day, you're always like, all right, well, you two guys go back in and keep playing defense, and let's make sure we're playing defense. And so do you think we're going to see more two-way players and we're going to recruit that way? Or do you think it's still going to come down like in box lacrosse, there's a 30-second shot clock and they play offense, defense every single time they get their best offensive guys out there?
Yeah, great point. I think in watching a lot of those PLL games or all the PLL games, I think there was always one offensive midi at least that ended up staying, and he subbed out on the next shift down the floor, down the offensive end. You bring up a great point with box lacrosse. They're still subbing, and they've got the shorter shot clock, and they're still, subbing of what goes on. You'll get caught on a bad bounce or a lucky bounce off the wall. And I do think, to answer your question, I do think you're going to start to see these college teams maybe get to, all right, at least one guy on your first two midfields, one guy on the first midfield, maybe one guy on your second midfield. Let him always, it will be his choice whether we can get him off, but we're okay if he stays and we spend some time with him defensively as we go forward. I think you'll always be able to get at least one on and then hopefully get two on, depending on what your riding schemes are. But if we could, have two guys, separate them a little bit, put them on different midfields, and we go in that direction, and then understand that if we're going to keep him on, well, then let's find him on the way out as well so we can take advantage of him coming the other way. And
that's pretty much the way it's always been. I mean, you got to have somebody that can get, and you hopefully, have two. But if you don't, you're going to play the best. You're going to end up playing the best guys. It's a luxury to have two-way guys. And if we all had two-way guys that could really know the defense and really know the offense, that would be huge. But sometimes I really feel like when you look at the transition that kills you in the PLL, if you give up transition, I coached 1 year with Hunts in the MLL. You give up, you take a bad shot or turn it over, it's coming down your throat. They're going to score.
Yep.
And you may say, well, we need more two-way midfielders. We're getting killed in transition. But so much of it actually is your efficiency on offense and not actually taking bad shots and not turning it over badly, because no matter who you are, that's going to result in a 5-on-4 that they're probably going to score.
There's no question. It's the decision-making right before that last shot that will affect whether you're in transition or not. Regardless of it's an offensive midi or a defensive midi, there is no transition if the numbers are the same. It doesn't matter. You got six guys back. They could be, 4-year-olds. There's no transition. It's just what it is. Numbers are all even. So it goes back to exactly what you said is that bad angle shot. It's that bad shot that's a save and an up and out. It's that bad pass that got picked off, and that's when you're going to pay.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time. And sharing all of your philosophies, views, and history and experiences. It was really great talking to you.
James, thanks for everything. I appreciate what you do for our sport.
Hey, good luck to Hofstra this year.
Thank you.
All right, see ya.
The Phi-Lacrosse-ophy podcast is brought to you in part by the JM3 Lacrosse Academy. This 10-week online program is designed to teach cutting-edge lacrosse skills and IQ. Athletes will learn dozens of new techniques, creative drills, X's and O's, and most importantly, how to integrate it all into their game. To learn more or start getting better today, go to www.jm3sports.com/academy.